What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to your creative unconscious reading for July 2nd. Happy new month. This is a great, I feel like July is going to be excellent. I already have this, it feels fortuitous. But one of the things that I was meditating on and, brought about by an exchange in the comment section, it was excellent, it was all good. But someone was talking about expanding beyond limitations. And I had, I had a different topic planned and I was meditating on it, and it just it clicked internally. And I felt like with a lot of the energies of July, it would be good to think about this in terms of the reading that we're doing here. And just, even next week, I'll be releasing for my creative process. I have a specific video that I'm putting together with tools that I use to help to heal aspects of my own solar plexus energy center. When my autoimmune symptoms went and got really intense, it was a call to kind of go within. So I did, and there's a specific tool coming with that for this week on Wednesday, the day of Wednesday. But for this reading, I wanted to tap into this, to see where this takes us in terms of expanding beyond our limitations, and how we conceive of our limitations too. When I think about visualization, but also, are we facing obstacles, or is it distractions? Like, how are we framing the things that challenge us, and how are we, allowing ourselves to win? Are we setting ourselves up to fail by seeing limitations through the lens of challenge or obstacle, or can we expand beyond that to see them as more of a distraction? Regarding the way sports psychology would see it. As in terms of performance, it's not an obstacle, it's a distraction from performance. So can we deploy similar ways of framing things in our own view of our limitations in a way that's healing to us and that helps us work with the energy as opposed to pushing it away, right? So it was just a thought, and it challenged me a little bit initially when I was started doing work along these lines a couple of years ago. But I just thought about how I think a lot of us too, we are going to be called to move beyond our limitations. I do feel that for sure. And I think that we live in a world of extremes where our limitations are not just, deleterious of forward progress, but that can also be, it can also have an effect where it draws energy away from what possibility could look like. And visualization for me has been helpful, but what does visualization mean in the context of specific things, right? I'll be covering some of that on Wednesday. So if you feel inspired to watch, do check that out on Wednesday. That is coming. But one of the things I wanted to talk about here was just how do we conceive of limitations? How do we move past them? And I wanted to draw on tarot for that, just to see where this energy takes us, because I feel like as a collective, there is an expansion happening. Of course, my cat would come to the door. 2 seconds. Come on, Squeaker. Okay. And we're back. So it's really just thinking about this energy in terms of how are we framing limitations, and how does our frame of limitations shape our understanding of self through this as well. So it's very exciting. It's a little philosophical, but it's my jam. If you've been around this channel for a hot minute, you know that that's what we do here. We dive deep, right? So I am going to, so I'll start. So I'd like to invite the angels, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, protectors, teachers, and their healing energy to this space. And I ask that it is a safe and brave space that allows for the fullest expression of our light, humanity, ascension, and healing. Okay, you might hear chirping in the background. My cat has zoomies, so she's trying to attack the grocery bag that she has. Oh, to be a cat. Spirit, what messages do you have from my creative unconscious, please? Messages for you. That was quick. There's a little rabbit on the back. Live your dreams. Okay. Dearest you, isn't it amazing how things seem to come around again, full circle, in ways you could not possibly have planned? You wonder how a dream could die, only to be resurrected years later when you're really ready. You thought it was time back then, but your wisdom knows better than your small self, whose desires are unmet. Now here you are with a new opportunity to do things from a different, more mature perspective. We want you to trust that in this new opportunity for rebirth, you will be called in two directions, and the one that is unfamiliar will be the right one. In the unknown spaces, the uncharted places of infinite potential, we are waiting to guide you into your fullest life. Big bounty will come if you remain in the present. You have come full circle, and now you can see that everything changes, is made anew, and is given new hope. Loving you always. Love this. So good. Okay, so we are going to... Okay, we're going to pull from the Light Seers Tarot. I have the Tarot of Light and Shadow here, but I just... Something keeps pulling towards this deck, so... And so it is. Spirit, what messages do you have from my creative collective for this creative unconscious reading about understanding limitations, reframing them, and seeing ourselves anew in the light and awareness that you bring? Seven of Cups. Okay, Seven of Cups, the Moon, the Fool. Interesting. Seven of Swords. Wow. Okay, so Seven's framing. This is, I love Spirit so much. I mean, like, I love Spirit in general, but I love, like, when Spirit's like, let me just, and, like, puts the lesson, like, right there. Okay, so I'm thinking about limitations, right? And framing. So framing, we're talking about how we frame limitations, right? So framing the two major arcanas here in terms of embrace and release energy. So embrace, release. We have sevens. So that is spiritual numbers. Both of them, interestingly, can split energy and divide it, right? They can split energy and divide it. But it can also cohere energy too, because once these things come up, this then allows us to rearrange our energy, because this is sort of a clear sight of what's going on in the heart and what's going on in the mind. And then I feel like this beautiful coming together energy among these two. So in terms of our limitations, I don't know that it's like, I think it's almost like looking at limitations as like different routes that we could take. Looking at limitations through the lens, instead of saying, well, that's an obstacle, it's a sports psychology book that I read called, I have it here, it's called In Pursuit of Excellence. It's this book here. You can see on my post-its for my video on Wednesday. But this book here, sorry, that's my lamp, but this book in particular, it was phenomenal. I read the 5th edition in 2014, and I got the updated one as soon as it came out, because it's been such a groundbreaking book for me. One of the things that it talks about, though, is the difference between distractions and seeing things as obstacles. So that's where we can get into visualizing ourselves as overcoming, but are we overcoming, or are we just seeing things for what they are and then assessing and moving forward from there? Are we looking at things as they are and seeing them for what they are, or are we, the limitation implies a projection on our part, right? Is that what the thing is, or is that what we are anticipating the thing in the exchange of our energy will be, right? So that's part of one of the things that I learned from this book years ago. It's interesting because this tells you the speed at which community organizing and activism worked at one point in my life. Was just, I found comfort in sports psychology books because they would help me to get past the times where I would feel really tired, like I couldn't make it to the finish line. So I relied on those books to really help me understand my capacity and understand potential in a different way in terms of the limits of human performance. Applying that to activism probably sounds like it was grueling, and at times it was, but it was just a different way of thinking about things like limitations and whatnot. But again, I think it's like, are we seeing something as it is? Because we can't see what's underneath any one of these, and we can apply a million stories. I'm hearing too that there's no wrong choices. Like, you can't make a wrong choice. So is it a limitation, or is it just that we are unaccustomed to our energy flowing in a specific way. So we're trying to rearrange our energy. And I think that part of what we're meant to do right now, like this is the embrace position. So this is a bit of like the mystery of things, the I guess the psyche. But it's like to avoid the black and white thinking of something and to really fall into the depths of how we make meaning, right? The moon is things we can't see. It's the depth of the psyche where psyche and psychic and that energy coming together. And I feel like it's like instead of this, it's resisting the black and white thinking of things, and falling into the depths and just staying there, right? Just staying there. Actually, interestingly, I had a dream last night. So I'm filming this on the Friday, so before Saturday. And I had a dream on Thursday, which was a wild ride in many different respects. It had like a spaceship. There was an awakening of some kind. It was interesting. It was like I was in this in-between place at one point, which was a bookstore, which in terms of, and it was just a small one, but it was like there was a loft bed there, so people moving through planes were able to stay there and sleep in that loft space while they're waiting. And I was waiting, and then someone met me there. But it like the depth of meaning in the dream itself too, just with libraries and bookstores are heterotopias according to Foucault's definition thereof, which is just essentially like it's a place where time collapses and like it 11:11 on the time. Time collapses and operates differently. I'll put a link in the description below if you're so inclined to dive into that. It's a bit of an older terminology, and he was, Foucault, through his books and through his theorizations, he was moving towards something that it was just brilliant, the way he was sort of the arc of his work. But heterotopias were they're so interesting to me because it's not a fixed time. Like libraries are an in-between space, bookstores are an in-between space, elevators are another example where it's like time doesn't exist the same because it's not a place you stay. It's a temporary place and it's a temporal holding pattern. So anyways, in this dream, it was a bookstore, of course, many books, but there was that, but then it was also what I'm seeing here is like this way that I was being birthed underwater. Like I was being birthed underwater. There was something along those lines, and there was this tiny crack between baseboards and the wall in a home that looked all green like this. The walls were very aged, and I saw the light at the top of the surface breaking through, and I broke through into what looked like an abandoned home. And it was just so interesting for so many reasons, but I bring that up here because when I think about limitations, I think about, that tiny space that we give ourselves to birth ourselves or an idea or work or energy or something into the world. Tiny space like this, like it was just so small, but the light filtered through, and I could feel the relief because I was trying to breathe. But it's almost like to embrace. I feel like we're embracing breaking the surface and also going deep, but understanding that we don't have to go deep in a way that takes our breath away. We don't have to go so deep in a way that takes something from us, is what I'm getting at as to why the dream just came up. This is also, I'm channeling at the same time, so do keep that in mind. But I feel like there's much that is operating underneath the surface. So don't necessarily embrace going into the depth, but don't do it to the detriment to your energy. Don't do it to the detriment of your heart, right? And the opposite of black and white thinking is also not, and the opposite of binary thinking, right? We live in a both and universe, and I think that's the both and is underneath the surface, but it's understanding the way that, we're not thinking in opposites. The opposite of black and white thinking is not diving so deep that you can't breathe. It's savoring this. Now I'm seeing a scene from the movie, I think it's like The Rise of the Guardians. I watched that movie every Christmas for a while, for many years, but I still did last Christmas, so it's an active thing, I guess. But the way that the moon would talk to Jack Frost to wake him up. So it's almost like this is like an awakening, like we're embracing an awakening that's coming from going into the depths. But then it's like there's an awareness that you need air. There's an awareness that there's a need that you have, like a physiological need. So you're trying to break the surface. Hence that dream where I came up and like breathed through, and I was able to climb through. It was a tiny, tiny spot, but I climbed through into this house, and then I went into a whole other space in the dream, where it was like traveling through this sort of hotel, this waiting area type place, and again, like waiting for somebody. And they arrived, which was brilliant. Had a motorcycle helmet on, so go figure. I can't see their face or no, but it's like it's that energy of birthing, right? So it's like this awakening energy, and I feel like what we're letting go of is, I think, the idea that you're leaping alone. The idea that you're leaping alone. This is the energy of having faith in the jump that you're about to make. But I think this is also having faith in a leap in consciousness. But it's like that solo figure here. And it's like, I feel like there's an important, you need to know that you're not doing this alone. You're not on your own in any capacity. And I think that's what is to be released. I'll still clarify the other cards here, but this is at the outset, the energy that's like whoosh, right out of here. And then the Seven of Swords it tends to be an energy of taking, but I feel like where you go is like you're taking a new perspective, right? It's almost like turning your back on this old way of doing things where you had to, it's like taking a fresh perspective, taking a different route. Instead of that, you're being the new route. Ooh, I have goosebumps. Thank you so much, Spirit. That was like channeled. It's not like a taking a new route. It's not a doing energy. It's a being energy. And that's the shift in limitation too. That's how you're sort of reconfiguring your relationship to limitation here. Wild. Oh, this is so good. Thank you so much, Spirit. This is brilliant. Oh. This is excellent. Spirit, what messages do you have on the Seven of Cups? Four of Cups. Oh, a kid might come over here. We're supposed to get thunderstorms, and I'm not like, I don't know. We're supposed to get thunderstorms here, and every time we get them, she gets a little, like, my cat gets like the zoomies, and she just gets restless. Poor thing well, she's not poor thing, like she's good, but she can tell the difference in the energy in the air, I think. So Spirit, what else? Emperor, Hermit. So, wow. So then we have the Knight of Wands. Dang. I feel like there's a definite shift in your energy. There's a shift in your energy where I feel as though you might have been in this Four of Cups place where you're not really certain. And isn't it so fascinating that we have different, like the moon is here again. So I feel like this is like a depth of not boredom, but being unable to see your cups because it's like a perspective shift. You're on the cups, you're standing on the cups. It's like, one of my coworkers the other day was like, where are my sunglasses? And we're on her head. So it's like you can't see it because you don't understand. It's like a whole other paradigm that you're moving into. I know that's not the definition traditionally of the Four of Cups, but with readings like this, I try to operate in a way that allows spirit to flow through. But I think it's also related to boredom though, because I think that there's a sense of boredom, and maybe that's the sign. Like there's something where you're like, ugh, about an energy or a thing, and I'm hearing humdrum. The thing that is like ordinary. Nope, we're not dead. There you go. I just want to save your eyes. But it's like this energy that seems so ordinary, and it's a shift outside of it. It's like moving outside of that energy to allow for another perspective to enter in. And this Emperor energy here, it's almost like I'm seeing tree rings, like cedars and how do I word this, Spirit? it's like the tree rings, like this is something that has been going on through several lifetimes. Like this could be something you've been working through several lifetimes, or this is just something that has taken a lifetime, and generational as well. Like this, it's something that has stood the test of time, or is operating through time, something like that, because of the heterotopia thing with the library and the bookstore, in the dream. But I think it's like the emperor doesn't necessarily mean generational, but I'm almost getting that it's like this. I'm hearing ancient. There's an energy here that's like deeply rooted, and that is definite emperor energy, right? Established, that kind of energy for sure. I mean, these are cards of wisdom. Like these are things that have stood the test of time, right? Like the emperor and the hermit are not cards this is aging gracefully, yes, but this is also about the wisdom that comes from the grace of having another day for so many days, and that I think this is a beautiful period where I'm almost getting that, like, you can't make a wrong decision because there's this light of wisdom within you that also translates into this light that it's like lighting up the world, like something that's shining brighter than you can really understand or imagine, right? Because this is you within yourself, and this is how you're shining in the world. I'm getting right now is this Emperor card. So within, you did the within, right? And it's not about just coming out of your shell. It's about changing the paradigm of home in general, okay? So then we end on this clarification with the Knight of Wands, which is, I think, forward movement, but I think it's also inspiration. It's like you had this period where you were assembling information and gathering information, and it's an amendment of your energy. Reconfiguration is the better term, but it's like a reconfiguration of energy that is allowing you to then move forward to know what to do now, and not what to do now, but it's like this being energy, right? This being, the Hermit card is a card of wisdom, yes, but to me it's a spiritual teacher that is well established in the beingness of things, the beingness. And I feel like that is so profound. I feel like that's really, it's something that it's like you're learning how to, I'm seeing like a scout sash, like it's like you're getting a badge, but you don't realize that that's what's happening right now. And it's not like a liminal space. I feel a bit like it's like this is where you're doing the activity, you're doing the thing, but you don't realize that you are, and that's not the point of it. It's not to get the badge. I don't think it's like that at all, and I don't think that that's in your energy. So we have the Page of Pentacles. Spirit, can you please clarify the moon energy here and this sort of awakening and this consciousness? The Hanged Man. Okay. So we have the Hanged Man, the Eight of Swords, and the Four of Pentacles. There's taking something about this is being grounded. So this is very abstract, right? Like we're in this depth, we're in this space that's very distant, but it's like there is something that is becoming like impossible to ignore within you that's happening. This is this awakening, like something's being switched, like this switch is being flipped, but it's like it was within you the whole time, right? Like Jack Frost in that movie was Jack Frost the whole time, but it was just the moment that he had to die and be reborn, right? So he didn't experience this, and it was like sleeping. He just woke up, right? It was just a dream to him. And I feel like that's sort of how subtle this shift and this awakening is. It could have been related to different, I'm hearing lunar nodes, okay. It could have been related to the eclipse. I mean, I'm seeing that somewhat here too with this Emperor energy. So it could have been during Aries time with the Emperor there. And the reason why I say that is just the full moon here, but it's like there's something that's been activated, right? So very abstract energy if we talk about it like that. But then this Page of Pentacles is grounding it in something, right? It's grounding it in something. And I'm hearing like I feel like it's grounding it in something, but it's like the investment is letting in the full spectrum of light. The investment is allowing the full spectrum of light. And this is like, in a way, it's like this initiate energy, right? Like the baby deer, it's like this initiate energy. I don't know why it's relevant, but what came to mind. So my stepfamily lives, well, they lived around Manitoulin Island, and one of the things, I went up there once and I loved it, but it was just so beautiful. My uncle and I drove around really early and we saw all of these really cool things, and that's where I learned that the deer on the baby deer, the spots, you can always tell a baby deer by the adults based on the spots on the back. So it's almost like this is how it's like, this is like the badge part, like as deer get older, they lose the spots. So that's how you can always tell a young, like I guess a baby deer. The proper name is escaping me. But that's how you can tell, and it's almost like you're wearing something like that on in your awareness or consciousness, because you can also see the spots around here too. It's very fragmented the way it's coming, but there's something that's very, you feel like the investment when you make it tangible. There's something about it coming to fruition, but it's grounded in something, and it's like everybody can see this like initiate thing, and maybe that feels quite uncomfortable because there's like this, you feel like you need to go back up and like, I need more awareness, I need all of these things, but absolutely not. This is just thoughts that are making you hide, like they're tricking you. These are thoughts that are tricking you into believing something, to believing that whatever it was that you gained while you were in this place, be it dreams, be it, astral travel, be it whatever it is, there's knowledge that's arriving, but it's like it's stuck. Like it's like you feel like you don't want to let it go. And I'm thinking about games that we would play as kids, like Cat's Cradle and things like that, like those string games. Can't remember them for the life of me right now. But those games where it's like string theory. I'm hearing string figures. Could be. I love Donna Haraway's work so much, but that's kind of like flying through right now, this string figures and the way that things are interconnected, like the interconnectedness of species on the planet and ecosystems. And maybe that's how, like, there's something about this like awakening that's bringing to the fore, this connectedness of everything. It's not, I mean, I'm not seeing it as oneness necessarily, but there's a way that this is operating specifically, that when you feel the sort of string figuredness of things, the tentacularity, thank you so much, Spirit. Tentacularity is another concept from Donna Haraway's book, but it's like this tentacularity where everything is connected. So like when something happens here, it also happens here, and then if this string is just like flicked, it'll happen, like they'll feel it throughout, right? It'll feel it everywhere, but that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. In terms of limitations, what I'm seeing here is the way that your consciousness shift. Whoa, my ear's ringing. The way that your consciousness shifts with this awakening, it's like it's setting off this sort of chain where you might feel stuck, but the way that you see the limitation also impacts other people, not in a way to, not saying to guilt anyone into thinking of things differently or in a way that doesn't feel intuitive or particularly helpful. But it's like this energy of what possibility lies in that. Because then just by you thinking something different or taking up a different perspective, being different, right? That beingness versus taking. And even just understanding the ways that shows up in language that we use, right? Like, oh, I took a break. No, I had a break, right? Like the way, and just seeing it, and sometimes it's like the energy is more substantive a shift than that, but just the use of language, right? The use of language and the way that we say things and how that can shift our energy in us, just like it. That was me trying to sound like a cog turning, but not one for impressions. Not tonight, at least. Sometimes on point, but this energy to me is really beautiful, because it's like you're seeing your power, even though you may feel really new to this. You might feel really new to whatever awareness you're in. There's something so powerful about it because it's affecting the collective in a way that helps it be unstuck. Just by you showing up and making it real, here. There's something that you're doing in the real world, in 3D, as it were, that is grounding this spiritual awareness, awakening energy. So I'm going to clarify further in the other rows here. So this, like, resisting the urge to feel like you're alone, we have the 10 of Wands here, which is definite, like, release energy, right? It's like, I'm hearing the song Weight of the World by Chantal Kardiazik. Great song. But it's like feeling like you had to not do it all, but this is like the burden of feeling like you were leaping without anyone. Like, I don't know. I almost see this as like a trust fall, right? Like those trust falls. We used to do this in gym class, which probably isn't the safest thing, but we'd have the gym mats out and we would do an exercise in trusting teammates and things like that. When we would play sports and whatnot, and the gym teacher was excellent. She was fantastic, but we would do trust falls, and it's almost like this trust fall, and it's like releasing the idea of this maybe even being a trust fall, because trust falls imply that you're alone. Trust falls imply a whole bunch of things, and that's probably the energy I was reading on this initially. But it's like this trust fall, but you're still like you're letting go of the thing that makes it feel like a trust fall. And then this is the Queen of Cups, so that you can understand the interconnectedness of everything. And I feel like there's like an element of celebration here, and there's like I'm seeing this like beautiful sound wave ripple out, right? It's like a sound wave that starts with your heart. Like there's something that you're doing differently that just echoes out and out and out and out. Wow. Judgment. Yeah, it's like an Ace of Cups on the bottom. Wow, and the Ace of Wands. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we have the Judgment card here, which is like decision time. Like this is the choice that you're making, but look at that. This is very much like it's not just leaving things behind. This isn't like the simplicity of a decision to like what to do today or where to eat. This is like something that you can't initially see the ripples of. You can't see it. You can just feel it. I think about when I go for hikes, right? Sometimes I'll step on a branch and it will snap the branch really loud. But because I'm in the middle of nowhere, proverbially speaking, you'll see, like, sometimes you'll probably, depending on the tree canopy, you'll see like birds fly out. And I'm thinking about that, like when, when bears in particular, because they're so large, walk through woods, and they will like even break a whole tree branch just trying to get through, like a whole like tree trunk that might have fallen or something. So that's a much bigger crack. But then it's just like how that can cause this, like all the birds to fly up. So it's like visible, but not from the perspective that you have. It doesn't mean you need to go into the Hanged Man necessarily or get the big picture, but I feel like it's enough for you to know that that's not where you want to be anymore. Like I feel like it's almost leaving the thicket. I'm seeing cedar trees. Oh my gosh, this is like taking me places. Especially with this too. So in specific areas, so I'm thinking about the Niagara Escarpment, for example. It stretches like all the way up and around to 3131 on the time. And the cedar trees will grow so dense, right, that there's specific parts of the woods that coniferous trees can flourish in terms of cedars, yes. Deciduous trees, not so much, because the tree canopy, it's so dense that there's no room for it, because cedar trees will grow like, and like literally you'll see them growing like this far apart or like a little bit further, but it makes for a much darker area that's like, it looks like the last place that someone will ever hike. It can be quite creepy, but I love it because there's so much life. It's like teeming with life. It's like the life of decomposers in the soil and things like that, but still, it's a beautiful, beautiful sight. But I feel like it's like this spiritual place that you're leaving, like spiritually applied. It's like you're leaving that dense thicket in exchange for something much more freeing, because it's almost like you had to go on this journey back into your heart. Like it's like I'm seeing this like energetic retrieval. Like there's an emptying of your energy, yes, on the one hand, but then I'm feeling like there's this way that you had to go back. You're like, oh shit, like my cup is in there. You're like, oh, it's like when you go for a hike, and I've never experienced this, but like No, I'm not even going to say it, because last time I did this and I said, like, I'm going to use an example, the thing happened to me like that day, so I'm not going to use that example. But it's just like you left something behind in the thicket. You left something behind in the thicket, and it's like you had to go back to get it, but you did that with such grace, and it wasn't something that you necessarily intended to do with grace, but it just happened that way. So this is almost like the leaving behind and the promise of something. Like, this is like the promise of this awakening. It's the promise of the way that your energy is moving in service to understanding, breaking free of these limiting beliefs, right? It's almost like this retrieval energy that I'm picking up on here. Like, there's something that you had to go back, and these could even be bats. Like, I don't mind bats. I think they're really cool. If you stand in a specific way and hold your arms up, in a way, you'll see them come around. I did this with my roommates last summer, and they were unimpressed. They were not impressed because I did. I'm like, no, it works, and they didn't believe me. So I did it, and it, like, all of these bats started coming around. But I feel like maybe it's something like that, where, like, you had to go retrieve something, but it's like, what may seem like you're just rising up from this, what may seem like a dark place. You're rising up from what may seem like a really dark place, but it was a place that was perfect to decompose the energy and to transmute it and integrate it, as opposed to like cutting. And like, I feel like cord cutting is helpful for some folks, but I feel like it's such an inorganic thing, because we don't cut. Like, we cut stems, but nature's processes are not that of like splicing and cutting. It's releasing, right? It's a releasing energy. It's a letting go. It's an awareness, because the thing that we cut, even with dandelions, right? People do this a lot with dandelions, is they'll mow them down. They'll mow them, and it deadheads them. It doesn't do anything to take the roots up, right? So you have to address the root causes in the soil. I think that they're great for pollinators, though, so I'm all for dandelions, but still, this energy is, I think, you making the decision or seeing things differently. It's like the peace that follows the depths of that wood that you had to go into within yourself. And then it's just like new. Like, this is like fresh energy. Ace of Wands, Ace of Cups. So it's almost like it's giving you the capacity to see not just yourself differently, but to see, this is like the light that you carry for others. The way that it's coming across is the light that you carry for others, and the way that you receive the light. This is like receptivity, right? This receptivity energy, but also then the way that you're shining for others. And that really does speak to this Cups energy here, but also to the Hermit, right? This going within. It's like this journey within that you're on, and then the way that you're shining the light for others. It's very apropos that it was a wand that came out in this energy, because it's like, this is how you're shining for others, so deeply rooted now. Like, there's a deep root that's taking place, or rooting. Spirit, what messages do you have on the Seven of Swords? A lot of full moon energy, so just be mindful of your energy around the full moon, specific to the full moon in Capricorn, the buck moon. It could be a time of activating, like it could be when your energy is like flipped on. Yeah, it's, I think July 13th. So just be mindful of that. Just tend to your energy. Okay, Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative unconscious collective? Seven of Swords. Whoops, we have the Page of Cups. I flipped them upside down and around, so I'm not reading reversals right now, because it's just, anyways. Well, I read them intuitively if they show up. Let me put it that way. Anyways, so Page of Cups, Two of Swords, Ace of Swords, the Tower. Whoa, okay. I'm going to get one more on the Tower here. This is so fascinating to me, because I see that this is showing up as the Emperor here with this tree, but like, there's like the truth of what happened when you were in the thicket. It's like it's changing the constitution that makes you up in your energy fundamentally, right? It's like a thunderstorm at night. Everything looks so different, but it's such a passing thing that it's like blink and you'll miss it. So it's almost like this. Anyways, okay, I'm going to keep pulling because I want to clarify this Tower here. But it's like this blink and you'll miss it energy. Four of Swords and the World. Wow, okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Spirit. That was beautiful. One of the things that jumped out at me at the first review of this energy too, on this, the embracing energy of the moon and this awakening energy, we have the Page of Pentacles, and then on this understanding of we're not taking energy, we're not taking things. It's like disrupting the vocabulary and the use of it, the verbiage. It might seem like semantics, but that's the very way that we make meaning of things, right? That's why some people wording things differently. Neil Donald Walsh did this throughout Conversations with God and had things just flipped differently, right? He wouldn't say like love always. It would be love space all space ways, love always, right? Like the ways that we can and sometimes it is just a trick of the trick of discourse, right? But I think about as well Edgar Casey's teachings. So there's the Edgar Casey primer. I'll put the link in the description if I remember. But I was reading through that, just flipping through it again the other day because it was on my shelf and I was like, and it just kind of called to me. But it was interesting because I flipped it right open to the page where he talks about at-one-ment. The author of that book talks about atonement and oneness, and atonement as being at one-ment with yourself. And that energy. So the way we use language, it's not just like this clever marketing trick that we can use to like, this is the brand of I invented this word. It's not like that. It's really about how are you perceiving the energy flow? Because if you say, well, I took a break, I took this, I'm taking some time for myself. Yes, that is true. But is it like, it's like just worth pulling back for a second to observe the investment that you have in the energy of taking. Like what would being say of that same scenario? What would nowness say that doesn't need to take, that doesn't need to have energy? And because it's almost like a separation that I'm seeing, right? Like it's like a separation. So what would that feel like or look like? And this may just be a philosophical inquiry that then opens up the heart space in someone or some folks, but it's like I'm seeing this. It's important to consider the use of language for the semantics of how it can anchor into triggers specifically. Wild. Okay. The reason why I like this energy here is because there's like so we have the Page of Pentacles here, and we have the Page of Cups here. So it's like this is like something so it's like the initiate when you ground these things, like you're the student of the things that you're making real and tangible. Okay, and then we get into the Seven of Swords energy where it's like taking energy. Are you taking things? It's like there's a way that this is giving you greater access to your heart because maybe you adopted language that was just environmental or situational, very much inherited, but it wasn't something that was genuinely coming from your heart, right? It wasn't something that, and you realize there's like a shift that takes place, right? There's a shift that takes place. And it's just like something I'm seeing like these, I'm seeing slippage came to mind and then like tectonic plates shifting, but there's no earthquake, right? Like, it's like, what would that happen? What would that be like? I mean, it defies the laws of, science and physics and all of these things, but it feels like something that fundamental, but something that shifts in ways that are that in defiance of what seems possible and limitations, right? It's like the defiance of limitations. So I'm picking up that it's like it shifts the energy in your heart space. And this Two of Swords is like you can't really see it right away. But the other thing that I love about this interpretation, so earthworms in particular, oh sorry, this is the Five of Swords, my mistake. Oh yeah. Five of Swords. Oof. Okay, so I do think that there's something that you can't see about it. Worms don't necessarily have eyes, but they have been found to be sentient beings, which is why I don't fish with them anymore. I don't fish, period, because I just don't like the ideas of hurting fish, because they too have been found to feel pain. Worms feel pain as well, so it's interesting. I think you're going to have to be really careful with your thoughts because they're going to multiply. Like I'm seeing that, like if you were to splice a worm, it would be in pain, but it would also heal, and then you'd have two of them. So it's like it grows more of itself. And I'm seeing the movie Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the scene where they had to dispose of Medusa, or not the Medusa, what is that monster? Ooh, it's the fire-breathing monster. Oh, it's escaping me. It's so basic. and you take one of its heads off, Hydra, I think, and you dispose of one of its heads, and then another two grow back. So it's that kind of thing. Like, it might be a persistent belief, but it's not unshiftable. And this is where it's like you see the limitations very clearly, because you're bumping up against the foundational, like the architecture of them. You're bumping up against the architecture of them, and it's just like, ooh, like you might feel like you're like grinding, right? Like, the way you can tell your brakes need to be changed is when you tap the brake and it's like, it feels like it's like grinding. Your car is talking to you about the fact that it's doing this, right? So it's almost like that. Brakes, interesting though. But this Ace of Swords, this is the beautiful truth of something. There's like an infinitude here. Something else that I really enjoy here, that Spirit's just lining things up like bam, 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 is this lightning here. Like, it's almost like the truth is this force of nature that bounces off of the truth here and then hits whatever perception you had of yourself, to sort of realign you with the correct one, right? The Emperor can be kind of crotchety energy sometimes, but it's also operating alone, right? And it's like there's like this way that you might have been sure of the way you were doing one thing. This is also established energy, so I feel like this is foretelling something, but this is like a sort of correction in your perception, right? A correction in your perception that's hitting you. It's like this force of nature goes bam, hits the Ace of Swords, your truth. It touches something about your truth here, the truth of what you're capable of, the truth of what limitations are, the truth of your perception of yourself, and it then bounces off into the sort of Emperor energy that you had of yourself, and it heals it, and it brings about the end of a cycle. It's like a bringing about the end of a cycle, but I feel like this World card here is more representative of this sort of way of being in the world, right? It's like this beautiful shift, this healed and healing shift that is, it's not fixing everything, but it's like the level of the mind. Something is changing. Something is changing that is allowing you to see, and this is not the traditional interpretation of the world, I know, but it's like it's allowing you to see the world differently because you're seeing yourself differently. 4444 was just on the time. And I feel like this is a process that it's not one that you could really have any control over. So it's almost like you just have to like buckle up a little bit, but just remember the infinity, this spectrum of infinity within you that surrounds this truth. It's a sword, yes, but it's not one that's meant to be wielded. It's not one that's built for that purpose, right? It's not one that's built for that purpose. Medieval, I think in medieval times actually, or later, they had swords for different purposes. They had like a flamberge sword that would be, it's Flamberge, just in case I have any like, history nerds like myself that want to look that up, but I think that was the sword that they would use for performances. Like, they would use that to sort of tell stories of battle and things like that. And it's like I'm seeing something like that where it's like, this isn't a sword meant for battle, this is a sword meant to speak truths. So it's not like you could cut yourself even being wrapped around it. So it's like it's not something that you're wielding on others, and it's not this ferocity. So it's almost like the energy of the Emperor is being discharged by this truth. The warrior energy of the Emperor is being discharged through this truth, and it's dulling the blade such that the light can not only get in, but the infinity of who you are and the light of who you are wraps around it in a way that is, it's like, how do you snuggle a sword, right? Like, that's how gentle this truth is. But the effects are profound, and this isn't necessarily a burning of the whole tree. I feel like this is just like, you're getting the fire is taking away. It's like a purification process of the things that made you believe that you were not the Emperor, the things that made you believe that you were not, that there's like this limitation that you placed on yourself, right? You place the limitation on yourself. And it's like a burning away of that, because it's the root structure is unchanged, and the rain will be sufficient to put this out, right? That's the impression that I get. We are due for strong thunderstorms here, so I'm like, ooh. But no, I love them. I wanted to be a storm chaser when I was a kid. But anyways, that like this idea that you had about yourself is being shifted. And again, it's like such a gentle truth. You can't cuddle with a sword. And that's where it's like it's like this innocence that takes over. This is really remedying a perspective that you held where it's almost like the swords were turned against you, and now it's just the silhouette of them that's like burned away in the light of this beautiful perception that you have about what's possible. Again, this very baby animal imagery, very baby animal, I don't know, but like something is shifting significantly for you. And it's not just at the level of like, oh, that's an idea that I'm changing. What does that mean, right? I'm getting that this is like, there's dreams that are going to be really important to you. Understanding semantics, just thinking about the way you use language, thinking about the way that it enters into your everyday, right? I was paging through an Anthony Robbins, oh my gosh, Tony Robbins book, Awaken the Giant Within. I was doing laundry in the basement and waiting for the cycle to finish so I could put the fabric softener in, because it's an older machine. But I was flipping through and it talked about language again. So it was like, it jumped out as really important, and the way that we use language, it's such a 3D thing that's so easy to overlook. But my goodness, does it ever give you access to the heart space? My goodness, does it ever unlock that? Right? I will remember, this just came to mind too. Oh my gosh. Okay. Louise Hay's been really loud in my consciousness lately. But there's her movie, You Can Heal Your Life. There's a scene where someone, I can't remember his name, but I can see his face very clearly. And he talks about how he said that he was going to kill two birds with one stone, and Louise was horrified and said, like, well, why would you want to kill two birds, right? Like, it's that kind of linguistic shift. Again, books that might be helpful, and even Maureen St. Germain talks about this in her book Waking Up in 5D. Very good book for that too. So a lot of different resources around, right? Like, you might just stumble upon some of them too. Like, they might just show up in your present. But I feel like the beauty of this shift is that it's giving you greater access to yourself, where it's like you can take on more of the world around you and take on more. That's so funny. Interesting. Isn't that so interesting? I feel like Spirit's showing up to be like, you gotta take your own advice. But this, I think it's like, it's allowing you to feel more like the world is your oyster, right? And that could even be an example, like, take on more of the world, or the world is your oyster. Which one feels more gentle? Which one feels in an energy of receptivity more than like, I'm gonna go do the thing? And like, I get it. I'm sure in a past life I was a warrior of some kind, like with just some of the things that I do and anyways. But like, this energy is like, things are opening up to you right now. Things are opening up to you. Like, look at the just the depth of the card, the detail here. The flowers are growing in the middle, right? I'm hearing particle collider. I do not know. I don't know. But particle collider. Why would I pick that up? I don't know, but nonetheless, there is an awakening that is either happening or has happened, but it's not one that's like bam. It's not like the tower is not the lightning and thunder that you might think would be accompanying a spiritual awakening. It's much more subtle. It's much more subtle. But you're not doing a trust fall. That's the beauty of it. So I'm going to pull from the Notes from the Universe on Love and Connection deck by Mike Dooley to close this out, or begin to close this out. Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective, my creative unconscious, for July 2nd, please? You'll find what you seek. Yeah. Maybe that's part of it. Like, if you look for peace, even in language, even in your linguistic use of things, the meaning that you make starts at the level of language. And it seems like such a tedious or not inconsequential thing, but it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Spirit, what messages do you have to close out this reading for July 2nd from the creative unconscious? What you give will come back. That's the reciprocity. And you know, I really feel like this is like the energy of sinking into not just the basics of words and verbiage and all of that, but I think it's like how you use language, and how you intend to do language. Oh, thank you, Spirit. How you intend to use language. Um, what is the purpose that specific phrasings have served? What is the energetics of them, and how have they supported the architecture of your experience? In terms of your limitations, thinking about them in those terms too. I don't know why language is like jumped out as so powerful and loud, but Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative unconscious collective here? I commit to being more present in my life. These are affirmations you can use or just energies to take with you for the journey. If something seems to be missing in your life, maybe what's missing is you. Complete this sentence. One way I can be more present in my life is... And maybe that's the energy of taking versus being, right? Oh, I need to take more time for myself. Well, what would being say? What would being express about that situation, right? I'm just going to be more present. Because one is like, it implies that you're doing something that is like a sort of like retrieving from the ethers. Like it's like a taking energy. It's like as opposed to this reciprocity, right? Like what you give will come back.